Everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining the call today. The topic today is around alternatives to guardianship and the project that the Human Resources is currently working on here in Missouri. And I know it's a hot topic. A lot of folks have some questions around what sort of decision it making is and what some of the alternatives are. So before we get started, just remind folks that these are lunch and learn style webinars, and they're meant to give basic information and overviews on topics of interest. So when we talk about supporting families and individuals, you might hear us talk about the 3 buckets of support that families need. And one of those buckets is having access to information and resources that can help them navigate through life. This webinar is something that you can share with them and actually help them fill that bucket. So please be sure to let them know. As Kat already shared, the webinars are recorded and they will be added to the webinar page at the division for later review. It generally only takes a few days to get those posted, so make sure you check back. And for this webinar today, we're going to start off with introductions. We're going to hear about the Alternatives to Guardianship project. We're going to learn about guardianship, limited guardianship, and conservatorship. And we'll also hear about what other options and alternatives are available to people instead of guardianship. And if we have time, like Kat said, we will answer those questions, so please be sure to put those in the chat. And I will start us off real quickly with introductions in case you haven't heard already or attended another webinar. But I am Lisa Nothouse, and I work for the Division of DD as the Supporting Families Lead. My husband and I have 2 adult daughters and 3 grandchildren. And our youngest daughter actually happens to have a disability and receives services through the division. So because we have so much information and so little time, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jennifer and let her get started. And if you will just introduce yourself, Jennifer, and go ahead and start sharing your information. I'm going to try to drop the ball into your court so that you can do the slides. And it's not letting me, but no problem. I will run slides for you if you want, if that works better. I'm having a hard time.
Yeah, that would be fine if you want to be the slide mover.
It looks like you've got it now, so I think it's all under your control.
See here. Okay, hold on a second here.
Do you see at the top of your screen underneath your
share screen?
Yep. Well, no, you shouldn't have to share screen. Just stay on the webinar page.
Mm-hmm.
And you have access to the controls at the top of underneath where it's got myself, Kat, and you. There might be arrows left and right. Next page.
You know, to save time, do you mind just doing it? Because I'm not sure that mine's gonna work. Sorry about that, guys. I should have.
Okay.
I should have gotten. I was trying to get on earlier, and my senile kicked in for some reason. So anyway, thank you guys so much thank you, Lisa, for having me come and talk to everybody about this, because it is a really important topic. We're getting a lot of input from families on it, so I am more than happy to share the information that we have and how people can access more information after that. So if you can go to the next slide, I'll kind of give you a little bit of a background on who we are and how we kind of got to this point of this guardianship project. So personally, I have a little over 30 years of experience in the field, and I always say in some way, shape, or form. I've been a special ed teacher. I have worked every position you could possibly think of with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So after 30 years, we kind of just decided to step back and do our own thing. And one of the things that we really took focus on that first year was the issue of guardianship. And really, as a support coordinator, when I was a support coordinator, I didn't know about any alternatives. I just knew that, you fill out the guardianship packet and that's it. But that is not the full story. So I want to make sure that people have like all the information. The one disclaimer, the one thing that I always like to tell people is that we, as an organization, are not anti-guardian at all. So those words will never come out of my mouth in terms of saying guardianship is bad. However, there are different alternatives that we'll talk about today that I think are sometimes a better fit for families. And so just to be able to provide that information to them is a really huge help. So about a little over a year ago, the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council opened up a request for proposals for a couple projects that they were starting for guardianship. And one was for training and consultation, like mediation for family members or individuals who are looking into guardianship or some of the alternatives, or even professionals who want to know more about it. And so when we put in for that, we saw that there was a second grant for the school system, because that really is one of the first pipelines to the guardianship situation. And so we wrote a proposal for that too. And luckily we were awarded both grants. And so it's a 3-year grant. We're just finishing up our first year, and I think we've accomplished quite a bit in that first year. But I'll give information at the end, but any family in Missouri who wants to know more about these alternatives to guardianship, wants to talk through the process, actually wants some direct support in working through that process, that's what we're here for. We're here to work through that process with families one-on-one to kind of provide that technical assistance, whatever they need. That grant project is free, so we can offer up to 5 hours of free consultation for families, which really allows a lot of time for us to really kind of delve into a lot of the details and stuff. So I just want to kind of get that out of the way to kind of give you an overview of what the project is, and then we'll kind of talk a little more at the end of how to connect with that. So next slide. The one thing I didn't mention is, as you know, guardianship is becoming a big topic, and there's more, Missouri is kind of more under the microscope, so to speak, when it comes to the practices and the processes of getting somebody into guardianship. And so I think now is the perfect time to be having those conversations and making sure that everybody across the board really has the most current and updated information available to them to make an informed decision. So the first thing that we want to talk about is, what is guardianship? Because a lot of people, we're finding out that we're talking to people, they have a very big misconception of what guardianship actually is. So guardianship is a legal process where a judge takes away a person's rights to make decisions like where to live, whether to work, who to spend time with, what kind of medical care to get, and it gives it to somebody else. And next slide, please. So limited guardianship, that's another piece in Missouri that's available, and a lot of people say it's all or nothing, but you can get limited guardianship. And so think about certain rights that maybe somebody wants to keep, like they want to have the right to vote, they want to have the right to drive a car, they want to have the right to get married someday. So through that court process, the judge can appoint certain rights still intact in the court order. And that's something that just has to go through that whole process. But it is possible to have limited guardianship. And so I just want to point that out, that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. There can be, it's something you have to prove to the judge that is something they're able to make decisions on their own with, but that is a possibility. Next slide. Conservatorship. So I want to explain, conservatorship means different things in different states. You would think that every state would kind of have the same lingo, but they don't. So, for instance, in California, they have a conservator, which is actually a guardian. So conservatorship here in Missouri means it's similar to guardianship, but it's only over financial affairs of the individual. So it has to go through that court process. The judge has to order conservatorship. However, it's only over financial affairs. So I just want to kind of let you know the difference between the two, because a lot of times those phrases get tossed around and intermingled, and people really get confused, and you have to be really cautious when you're using those words, depending on what state you're in too. People get really confused by that. So just always remember, conservatorship here in Missouri is over financial only, and then guardianship can be over everything. Next slide. So one of the main things that's important to know about guardianship is it's not a quick fix. I know a lot of people, rightfully so, may be in a situation where they feel like they're going to protect the person who's made a bad decision or is about ready to make a bad decision. So they want to swoop in and get guardianship over the person. And I'm not saying that is wrong, but what I'm saying is it's not always a quick fix. If you think that's going to make everything like roses and rainbows after that, probably not the case. So that's one thing that I really want to stress to people and that we do when we talk to families is that it's not going to fix all the issues that are kind of underlying there. Next slide. So probably what a lot of you showed up here today for was to find out what are the alternatives. So in general terms, there's general supports, obviously natural, unpaid, uh, people, community resources. It might include family, friends, or other advocacy organizations, which we have a lot of out here in the Kansas City area. We have a lot of wonderful advocacy organizations, and I'm sure other parts of Missouri do as well. um, Decision-making supports to help create legal documents such as power of attorney, giving authority to someone on behalf of the individual in certain areas. There's money management support, so helping somebody manage financial obligations to avoid, being put in a vulnerable spot. It could be anything from like a joint bank account to a special needs trust, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about those as well. And then personal safety supports, they're useful for people who are at risk for being taken advantage of. Um, that could be a lot of different things. It could be a support involving getting somebody involved in an educational class on, personal, keeping your body safe and or keeping your money safe. Um, or it could be a little more, like remote supports or something like that to help keep them safe. Next slide. So, what does Missouri say about alternatives to guardianship? Well, like I mentioned earlier, back in 2018, they changed the wording in the guardianship statute for Missouri. So, Missouri's statute on guardianship updated its language to include the least restrictive alternative to guardianship be explored prior, that's before filing for guardianship. Now, I will say that that probably doesn't happen all the time. In a perfect world, that's how it's supposed to work. But I do believe that the more people understand that that's what the law says, and that's something that they have a right to, that they will be more vocal in making sure that those other alternatives are explored ahead of time, because there actually is documentation that they have to provide saying yes, they did explore other alternatives and they're not a good fit, and here's why. The Missouri statute says that the individual should be offered the least restrictive form of guardianship, taking into consideration the person's individual's functional limitations, personal needs, and preferences. So that's a big part of it too, that sometimes I think slips through the cracks. As a least restrictive alternative to guardianship, supported decision making is supported by both national and local efforts. So we're going to kind of get into, next slide, please, what supported decision making actually is. Um, so a lot of times, if we just throw out the term supported decision making, everybody starts getting scared and they're like, oh, I don't know, you know, that's it's not complex at all. Here's a perfect example. A couple days ago, my daughter, who has a 9-month-old, she wanted to get another car seat. And so she put up a message on Facebook that was to all her mom friends who have maybe older children who have been through that process, and had like a choice of 4 different car seats with different things attached to them or whatever, safety features and things like that. And she just put out the question, okay, all my mom friends, what do you think is the best option? I need to change car seats. What would you say would be the best option, and what's your reasoning? That is supported decision making in a nutshell. That was like the perfect example of supported decision making. So, of course, in our field, we like to slap labels and names on everything. Supported decision making is just that. It can be as formal or as informal as you want, or what works for the individual. So, the definition, the formal definition, is a tool that allows people with disabilities to make their decision making capacity by choosing supporters to help them make choices. A person using supported decision making selects trusted advisors such as friends, family, um, other professionals to serve as their supporters. So, I mean, that's really at the very basic level what supported decision making is. So, when you hear that term, don't start getting all anxious, because it's really not that, it's really not that bad. Next slide, please. Okay, so what another thing I like to do is talk about what it is and what it isn't. So what it is it's a supportive practice that presumes the capacity of people with disabilities. So you're always assuming that the person has the capacity to practice these decisions with supports. It's a skill set that can move and grow with the person with disabilities. It's a very fluid document. If you use a supported decision agreement, it can be changed at any time. You can add people, you can take people out, you can change kind of who helps them with what decisions, or how those are, supported. It's voluntary. Nobody is forced into it. The individual is not forced into it. The supported decision-making team is not forced into it. It's something that they have to be committed to, but it's very, very voluntary. It's a way to help someone come to their own decisions about what they feel is best for their own lives. And it's a practice that allows the person a right to risk and make mistakes. And I know that's really scary. I get it, but it offers that chance for people to kind of weigh out those risks and have some natural consequences. Next slide, please. So what it is not is it's not a way to presume incompetence of the person with disabilities. It's not a prescriptive set of actions. That's why I was saying before, it's very fluid. It can be changed at any time. It's not this cookie cutter set of rules that somebody has to follow. It is not ordered, so it's not something that goes through the court process. You don't need an attorney for it. You can, you can have them draw up a supported decision-making agreement, but it's not mandatory. It's not a way to coerce a person with a disability into making a decision that someone else thinks is best for them. And it also is not an opportunity to protect the person with disabilities from a perceived threat. So, like I said before, it's not a way to, take the risk away. The risk is still there, but the main goal is to have a really solid circle of support to help people, make that right decision. Next slide. So what does it look like? It can look different for everybody. It should. There should never be like one, it's kind of like a snowflake. It should never be one of the same supported decision-making plans, because everybody's different. Everybody has different support needs. And so we really want to individualize that supported decision-making agreement. Now, when I say supported decision-making agreement, That's the very formal part of it. There are templates you can use. I know the Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council and Missouri Protection and Advocacy have templates. We have not yet put a template on our website, but are in the process of kind of updating some of that information. So examples of the tools might be just putting things in plain language. Our organization is really, really, really focusing on putting this information and other information that we provide into different modes of communication that people will understand. You know, there's different target audiences, and so we're really playing around with a lot of the assistive technology, um, artificial intelligence, although it's a little scary. We kind of use pieces of that to kind of help communicate some of that stuff in a way that really helps kind of make it more engaging, easier to understand. Extra time to discuss choices. So if they're in a meeting, they shouldn't have to make a choice right then. Let's say, for example, just a person-centered plan meeting with your support coordinator. And it shouldn't be something that they have to make decisions right at that meeting on like their services. They should be able to go home, talk it over with their circle of support, and kind of weigh out what's the best choices and then get back to them. Creating a list of pros and cons. My mom taught me that like when I was in 5th grade. I still use it to this day. Your little T chart with the pros on one side and the cons on the other. The one thing is to not try and manipulate it to get the answer that you want, because I do that a lot. But that's another tool that we can use. Role-playing activities. This is one that I love, and this is one that we try to use a lot also. Working through the actual situation and the scenario, and you know, what happens if you make this decision, or what would it look like if you make this decision. Bringing up a supporter into an important appointments to take notes and help the person remember and discuss options. That's a big one. Again, at meetings or just any appointment that they have, they should have somebody you know, be able to take notes and help them kind of reprocess some of that information. Opening up a joint bank account also. Okay, next slide. Okay, quickly, because I know we're running out of time. Power of attorney, that's another one that gets very confusing. There's two types of power of attorney in Missouri. One is financial power of attorney. Obviously, it allows somebody to handle your financial or business matters. And the other is medical power of attorney, which in Missouri is called power of attorney for healthcare. So there's two forms that you would have to fill out. You can have one, or you can have both, or you can have none. It's kind of a mix and match. And that's the cool thing about it. You can have power of attorney over financial, but then you can do supported decision making for everything else, or vice versa. It's just whatever's the best fit for the individual. The only thing, and a lot of people ask this, well, what's the difference between power of attorney and guardianship? Power of attorney can be taken away at any time. So the individual that's giving the power to the person to make those decisions can take it away anytime. And it can actually even be done verbally. So that's something that you really have to kind of watch out for and have a really good communication with the person and make sure that that is a situation that they want to get into. Next slide. We'll just go over the requirements really quick. It's kind of a gray area when you're talking about mental capacity, so I'm not going to delve into that rabbit hole right now. However, if you're ever in doubt on whether an individual has a capacity to enter into a power of attorney, consult a lawyer. We do not provide legal advice. I couldn't afford law school, so that'll never happen. But there are attorneys out there who are more than happy to lead you in the right way with that, and it would be highly recommended. And then the last thing for power of attorney is you have to get it notarized in order for it to be honored. A lot of banks, a lot of places won't accept that power of attorney if it's not notarized and signed by yourself, the individual, and two other witnesses. So just know that ahead of time. Okay, next slide. So what about if guardianship is the best option? You can still use supported decision making and guardianship. The two can get along together. I think it's a perfect opportunity to still provide that, decision making skills, self-determination within a guardianship setting. They still have that safety net of the guardianship, and the guardian being the person who makes the final decision. But why not give the individual as much opportunity to make their own decisions within that circumstance as possible? Supported decision making can also be used if they want to try and get their rights restored. That is possible. It's really hard to do in terms of getting rights restored, but it's not impossible. Supported decision making is a perfect way to document and take data for a certain amount of time and then show the judge, hey, look, this person has a supported decision making plan. It's just a trial, like they didn't sign anything. We're just doing it on a trial basis. However, they've been able to make these tough decisions with this circle of support around them, and we think they're ready to have some of these rights or all of these rights returned back to them. So that's important to note also. Next slide. Questions? We've got 3 minutes.
I was perusing through the chat as you were finishing up. One of the questions that we had right off the bat was, what is the difference between a conservator and a representative payee?
Okay, so a representative payee is strictly for Social Security benefits. So when you're talking about a representative payee, that's for, the financial benefits, Social Security and supplemental security income. And then a conservator would oversee, everything, bank accounts, in terms of like everything financially related, any financial decisions have to go through a conservator. Whereas a payee for Social Security may not have a say in other, you know, types of things with finances, but they're basically overseeing that Social Security benefit.
Okay. Another question is, would or should conservatorship and a power of attorney be completed together?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Again, that would be a good use of kind of mixing and matching what's going to be the best fit. That's showing that somebody's putting a lot of thought into, okay, I know for a fact that they have to have this legal oversight um, appointed by a court, probate court, saying, we have to have this oversight for finances. But you know what? I think the medical is not so risky right now, and I feel like a power of attorney would be a much better fit for them because they're not losing that right.
Great. Well, and we've also got a kudos in the chat, so very well
Hey,
done. Going to use that
good.
website as a resource, so I agree. The next question is probably on the next slide. The best way to connect with you. I'll
Yes.
segue right into that.
Yep. So info@humeresources.com is the best way to send a question about our project or anything in that matter. We cover all of Missouri for some of our other services. We're contracted by the Department of Mental Health. So if you want to ever go to healresources.com or check us out on Facebook, you can kind of get to know us there. And then we also have an alternatives to guardianship.com website. Now, I will tell you, it's a little more technical, but it has a lot of good information, especially in the what's new section, because it kind of helps you see kind of some behind the scenes things that are going on that we're really trying to get some answers on, as far as what's going on with these processes, why are they working great in some counties and not in other counties, and what can we do moving forward to actually fix it. We do a lot of talking about it, but we really are focused on that action piece. That's why we provide those one-on-one supports for the families instead of, there's nothing wrong with brochures, there's nothing wrong with booklets, but really the family needs somebody to walk them through it. And so really that's what we're here to do. So any of those ways to get a hold of me, just pop in, say hi. I would love to, work with this. We want to get more people from different parts of the state because we've got quite a good hold on our area, but we're trying to spread the word.
That's great. And I appreciate it so much. And I knew this was a hot topic and a lot of people
Yeah.
have questions and it's across the board. Guardianship doesn't just impact people with developmental disabilities, but the aging
Yes.
population as well. So good
Mhm.
information. I appreciate you jumping on board to do this.
Not a problem. I hope that my phone and my email and all that stuff blows up. That's the goal, to be able to get this out to more people. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share this. Thanks everybody for hopping on. I really appreciate it.
Right. And so just real quickly before we close out, just go ahead and mark your calendar. The next Missouri DDD and U webinar is scheduled for June 27th, 12:30 to 1. Thank you all. Appreciate you all being here. And Jennifer, thank you again. Good
Thank you
information.
guys.
Again, check the webinar page. The recording will be posted there. So if you want to share it with the families and individuals that you support, it will be there for you. Thank you all. Bye-bye.